Okay, I started the recording, and just to let you know that I did do a recording for topic 9, and I'm not so sure if I actually sent an announcement, but it's on the YouTube channel, and it's also in the MS Teams chat, so you can pick it up there. But when I put this video on the YouTube, I'll make sure that I announce both links, and then you can go to those areas. Okay. So I released that video, I think probably Tuesday last week before the tests. So and so topics 9, 10, 11, and 12 will be on test number 3. And I see that the registrar changed the date on the test, and I will announce that date as well. But I think I originally had it for December the 13th, and now it's on the 15th. And then you'll access it the very same way, and it's only on those topics, and it's not an overall test for the term. Okay, so that's where that is. Okay, so just before I get started, any questions at all? I'd entertain some questions. You can unmute and ask the question. Okay, so this topic now, production operations strategic management, I'm covering it for 2 reasons. One, it's to help you with the 2 participation activities. So we're going to cover the material, and then secondly, it's to really focus on what's key in the slide decks, or the slide decks for topic 10, and you'll see that I'm using some yellow highlights. And so when you see yellow highlights, you kind of, and if you have any questions about those highlights, I'm going to elaborate on them. And in most cases, in other cases, it's just obvious. There's certain areas that are more important than others. Okay, so I'll start there, and then just get into the material. Okay, so if there's no questions, then I'll just get started. And we've got about 65 slides, so it's going to take up most of the time of this webinar, and then both these participation participation 10A and 10B are both group submissions, and now it's actually set up to be able to be accepted as group. So we'll go from there. Okay, and I'm proceeding. I'm making progress on the marking. It's been a hefty piece to keep up to date on this course, so I'm pretty well there, and I think by this week you'll have your marks on the pair assignment, which originally was called the pair assignment, which is the group assignment on the cupcakes. Okay, and I'm working along on the remainder of the participation activity marking as well. Okay, so here we go. So it's week 10 commentary, and again, this is posted in the section on the Blackboard just below topic 13, and you can get in, and they're all there, and all the presentation pieces are inside of that commentary folder, and also for the 10A, I've actually included a second piece of information. It's a Word doc to help you do the ideal customer participation topic. Okay, so we'll go from there. All right, so just wanted to show you where this all falls in. We talked about strategic planning, but this is a cascade of planning that you need to recognize. And where we start is, we start with the strategic plan, and the whole idea is that alignment is power. So if each level of organization can line up with the main vision and mission and goals and directives and focus areas of the strategic plan, then there's power in that, and there's accomplishment. And again, in my experience, I've done a lot of work in strategic planning, right from the board all the way down through the TELUS holding company, the strategic partners, or the subsidiaries and their companies. and it wasn't uncommon that some division or some department had a goal that may conflict with another department or another area of the company, and that's a really important issue, because then you have people that are squandering resources, or they're competing against each other to get resources, and then that's misalignment, and then you can't really execute on the overall organization's goal. So that's really important. Okay, so here we are. We start with a strategic plan that cascades down into an annual business plan, and oh, by the way, the planning horizon for a strategic plan in North America is roughly 3 to 5 years, and in larger corporations sometimes it goes to 10 years. And the Japanese, I think, have this right. Their strategic plan horizon in some cases go to 50 years. And that's not to say they visit the plan every 50 years. The strategic plan is visited annually, and it's recalibrated. And again, Gretzky talks about, you're only as good as a hockey player as how you were on your last shift. Well, the strategic plan is only as good as the last time you looked at the environment and the environmental scan and the internal environmental scan, and understand that you're still relevant, right? So that's key. So we start with the strategic plan, and that direction is cascaded down into an annual business plan. And normally an annual business plan is a 12-month plan, and it mainly carries the overall corporate budget. And it really looks at the priorities of that year that are identified in the strategic plan. So it could look a little differently each year based on how the priorities shift, but that's the way it goes. And then from that annual business plan, you go through the annual marketing plan. And again, the annual marketing plan is a 12-month plan in most cases. Sometimes there's a 3-year marketing plan, but in most cases it's an annual marketing plan. But what needs to follow from that is a communication plan. A lot of times it's part of the marketing plan, but sometimes it's totally independent of the marketing division or organization. But what you need to understand about the marketing plan is that there's all kinds of campaigns underneath that marketing plan. And it's because, they're highlighting different products, or they're different product lines. And what I've seen in my experience is that the messaging that goes out has to be consistent. It has to be totally consistent, and so that you need aligned campaign messages. So that's what you really need to understand. And oh, by the way, since we're post-pandemic, there's sort of an offshoot, a part of the marketing plan, but it's a digital marketing plan, because we've gone from bricks and mortar to bricks and clicks. And I did a lot of work, and during 2020, 2021 with federal development, through their community futures development corporations that lend money to small and medium businesses. And I helped about 15 of those businesses find their way of just graduating from having their bricks and mortar business merge with a digital side of their business, and start creating offerings through an upgraded website, and oh, by the way, through a new point of sale system, because point of sale systems now are easy to acquire. They're cheap, and I'm thinking of Shopify or Square, or there's, and some of them are really specific to specific professions and all those things. But what they do is they integrate the website with the inventory, with some of the internal piece where everything is integrated, so that if you sell something on the website, that it's left inventory, and you know what the pricing is, and you can do all kinds of great reports. So that's good news for small and medium-sized businesses. And now it's a hybrid business of bricks and clicks, right? And oh, by the way, just one more thing about that. If we, I looked at the research in the millennials, and millennials will go online and they'll learn everything there is about, and I'm generalizing, but this is the research, that's what it says. They'll know all about the product, but they still want to go into that physical location and experience, around that product, and get a sense of the people that are selling that product, or offering what it's like. And so they want the full experience. So that's some of the things that you should, you should be aware of. And I'm really going to talk about the customer journey as well, and why now that's so important, on the marketing side. Okay, so we're going from the strategic plan, and again, you do that situation analysis where you look at, and PESTLE that you've done, and then you do SWOT, and then there's other things that go in there like the 5 C's, and that's another framework for looking at the competition and other things, and then the actual Michael Porter's 5 forces. That's all key information that needs to come together to be able to get a sense of what that strategic plan is all about, what the issues are, and then work that into future goals and action plans. And then that's where the business plan picks up. But now it really focuses on, the business portion of what their purpose is in terms of the mission, and they start looking at, who, what, why, where, and look at the financial projections, translate it through a 12-month budget, and then gives direction for the marketing plan. And then the marketing plan gets down into, the nitty-gritty of, who are the intended customers, what's happening with those customers, and talks does a lot of research and different levels of research, and we're going to talk about that, and then understand, how to drive that value proposition. And so that, and I'm going to talk about the value proposition a little more because we're going to be working on the are going to be discussing the participation 10A about describing the ideal customer. And in my view, that you really have to, that goes hand in hand with the value proposition. So I'm going to talk about Alexander Osterwalder's value proposition canvas, and how so easy that is to be able to get that going and in line with what you're leaning on towards defining that ideal customer, right? So that's where that is. Okay, so let's look at this marketing plan like holistically. And you can see that it goes through a lot of the same processes that the strategic plan goes through. And why? It's because, again, it's a system view of how you're going to create competitive advantage. I mean, that's the key thing out of the marketing plan. And then out of that competitive advantage, really hone into, the systems part of how to make this come together overall. And, I talked about systems thinking, last topic, but that's really key. I mentioned the 5C analysis, so that's company, customer, competitors, collaboration, and climate. All right, so that's another that we're not going to cover in this course, but that's another framework that you should be aware of. Right, and so what you do is you get down into a situation analysis to focus on the customer side of the business. You develop that marketing strategy. And then from that marketing strategy, you drive a marketing mix that will give the direction to execute on. And the marketing mix really, that's a framework. That you don't get any economies of scale from that, because there's different areas in that marketing mix. And then originally they talked about the 4 Ps of marketing as a marketing mix. I'm going to talk about the 8 Ps, and how we've evolved and how you use that as well. And then we get into, where the rubber hits the road, and that's implementation and control. And how do you put that plan into action, and then what gets measured gets done, and monitoring results. So that's where that's all going. But again, pricing strategy, you can see, is highlighted. That's pretty important in this topic. So that should get you to start maybe writing notes. But we are going to talk about, the functional strategy. We are going to really talk about the target market, because that's where you get the information to really hone in on your ideal customer. And the ideal customer has 3 different terms attached to it. Some people or some organizations call it the ideal customer. Some call it your buying persona, and some call it your avatar. So we're gonna bridge that and go from there, and then a lot around messaging strategy and going through that. Okay, so again, I want you to kind of understand that, in where we've gone in terms of post-pandemic, where there's a gravitation towards more digitization of marketing, getting out on the World Wide Web and working through the internet, and also that converging with using artificial intelligence. And that artificial intelligence is really kind of juicing up or giving more capability to market research, we're going to talk about customer management relations, CRM, customer relationships management, and that uses artificial intelligence as well. And you're going to see how more efficient and effective that is to get the right information to allow people to, sell better. All right. Okay, so the go-to-market strategy, identify that target, define that value proposition, which I'm gonna cover a little bit. Set clear objectives, then you develop that marketing plan, and then you build that sales pipeline. And understanding that sales pipeline in terms of opportunities, and in that sales pipeline, we're going to go through this hourglass piece that's on this topic that is part of that sales pipeline. And then develop the pricing strategy, which is crucial, and then again measuring and optimizing. So that's kind of where we're going. But take a look at digital marketing, and all these pieces now that are coming in to be part of the customer journey. And the whole idea about marketing is going where the customer is, communicating on the customer terms, communicating in the customer's communities. So that that brings that digitized aspect around that, and it's not just anymore, making a pamphlet and putting it on a folder or whatever, in a folder for a trade show. There's all this multi-channel aspects of getting to connect with that customer that you really should be thinking about. Okay, so the first participation topic that you need to do is to identify an ideal client for Tim Hortons. And again, this is a group activity. And so what I'm going to try to do is give you some information and to make it a little easier. And then also just remember that there's a document under week 10, topic 10 commentary that will help you kind of itemize some of the things that you need to identify for the ideal client to make it easier for your group to be able to put this together. Okay, so what is an ideal client? Well, it's you look at it, it's people who fit your target description, and then that turns into a prospect, and it's a list of people who have responded to an offer or more information, and then from there, as you kind of qualify prospects, then you can engage them as clients, and that's a list of people who tried your product. And then repeat clients, and it's all about loyalty and advocacy that you want to shoot for. You want those people coming back. And I think I talked a little bit about the service profit chain in the last topic, and that's something that you should Google and understand what that's all about, because what it is it's investment in the employees that enhances the customer satisfaction, that turns into customer loyalty, that turns into business growth, and keeps those coming back. And then you have that, that chain that keeps on making the business larger, better, faster, and more effective. And as you're doing that, you're creating champions, and those champions are advocacy here. So that's what to keep in mind when you're building this ideal client profile. Okay, so what are they? They're your most profitable clients. They're the clients that recommend you to others. They have common characteristics, and that's where we need to get into the demographics and the psychographics and understand, what are their goals? Where do they want to go? How do we motivate them to buy from your organization? And then you create a biographical sketch, all right, of what that ideal client is. And here's kind of, this is another one of Professor Power's slides. you're going to get into demographics and their personality and their preferences. And now we're going to talk about pain points, which is related to the value proposition and Alexander Osterwalder's canvas, so that you know that in the value proposition, there's, what are the gains they're looking for, what are their pains, and then how do they go out about their business to find, use, and talk about your product in the value proposition. So pain points are key. Their goals, their core values, and because then you can resonate, and their communication style. So you got to get to them on their terms, and then some background about them. So that's kind of the big piece. So let's start with the value proposition. And the value proposition is, why should customers buy from your organization and not the competition? And more about that is that, how can we understand what keeps them awake at night in terms of what are their issues, and what do they, how do they define their success, and how do we help them get there? So that value proposition is, well, what is it? What is that offering? And then what's unique about it, and all those things. Who's it for? And that's going to get to your ideal client. And then where and when it will be used. And then how do you tie that offering? I'm not going to call it product or service. I'm going to say offering, to include product and service, to that ideal client. So that's really, that's where you start from. Okay, and here's now Dr. Alexander Osterwalder's template, or what he calls a canvas. And if you Google this, well, matter of fact, I think this link, if you click on it, it'll take you right there. And there's even procedures on how to look at each element of that. And so so the first thing is you start with the actual profile, and that's what's going to really kind of get you to your ideal client. And then what's your ideal client looking for in terms of gains? What do they want to get out of that offering so that they can have a better life, or they can have, great value of what they purchased? And then what irks them about, maybe competitors' offerings, and what isn't, where are other competitors missing the boat? And that's where another area comes in, and Blue Ocean Strategy is another book that you should get a summary for on Google to find out, how to create a strategy canvas on that book, all right? But it's, what are their pains? And then the customer jobs in these customer jobs, that's, what did they do to find you? How did they find you? What did they experience when they tried to find your offering, and then what did they experience in purchasing your offering, and then how did they use it, and then what are they saying about it, and then in the long term, how is that going? So that's the whole piece that drives how you create the value proposition itself, so that you want to create gain creators, you want to create pain relievers, and you want to outline the products and services that best align with that ideal customer. Okay, so here's an example, and I did this for basically a small arts organization that was in a county that featured local artists and historical things about the area. So we started and we defined Amy Artsy as the ideal customer. And then, so what did we say about Amy Artsy and that ideal customer? Well, they wanted to experience more than a gallery. They wanted to meet like-minded guests and patrons as gains. And on the pain side, well, they don't travel that much, so they don't want to travel too far to get to where they need to go. They're in a rural location, those kind of things. And then, so their Amy Artsy's customer jobs, they want to find us on social media. They want to review our inventory and prices. So all those things. I'm not going to go through the whole detail piece, but then that gives you a sense then of how to develop, your value proposition in terms of what products and services are you going to offer, and how are you going to create gains for that ideal customer, and how are you going to relieve some of those pains for that ideal customer. So it's good to kind of take a look at that before you get started. Okay, so on that customer profile, you know, the modality, how are you going to reach them? You know, what venue are you going to go through? So, you know, if you've got a Generation Z, it's likely going to be maybe through TikTok or something like that. And what kind of demographics are they? What are their psychographics? It means, you know, what are what's their lifestyle styles like? What are their desires? What are their goals? You know, what are they really interested in? And then business demographics. That's, you know, if you're doing business to business stuff, you want to get a sense of what kind of business as a customer profile you're going after, and then what kind of relationships do they have, and who are their allies and their partners, and then how are they motivated? And that's a really good sense of how to you know, create this and ideal customer, or what we call customer avatar. So then I've left you with some things that you can read up about in terms of, you know, and we call it a buyer persona, or a marketing persona, or a customer avatar, target market. You know, it's all the same, but if you take, you know, if you do it on a personal basis, you'll get a better feel, you know, and imagine this ideal customer sitting across from you, and you know, what are they telling you in their story? And that'll really give you a sense how to personalize this thing and make it an intimate connection is what's going on here. Okay, so here's just an example of Sally Solopreneur to tell you, you know, how you could do a description of what Sally's all about, and then you get into the actual details of populating, you know, the attributes around this ideal customer in terms of age and relationships and education, income, you know. So now you're really starting to get a sense of what's their buying power and their preferences going to be like. What are they interested in? And then you know what they're interested in, then you know how to connect with them, and you know where to connect with them. And then what are their behaviors, you know, in terms of how they like to spend their money, how they like to save their money, how they travel. And that will really give you a sense of what's going on there. And then general stuff, right? And then again, so now that you've created this space, then you can really hone in on your value proposition. And this is what these typical ideal customer profiles look like when I was done with them with the client. And it was a 2-pager, you know, a little bit of a description around the ideal customer, Amy Artsy, and then going through all those key attributes in terms of identifiers and goals and demographics and some background, and then into, you know, what are their gain points, what are their pain points, what are their values, what are their psychographics, their motivation, their relationship. And you can see how this, you know, pain and gain and customer job, you know, what they have to do, it all ties into this. So it's a good way of getting a full view of what your ideal customer looks like, and you've really formulated your value proposition around that, and now you've got some winning combination now to go out and make that work in the marketplace. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this and just show you what this other document looks like. This is the document that I put in the week 10 commentary for your use. And so you're going to have to come up with an ideal customer. I'm not saying you use this form, but it's a good piece in terms of a checklist of all the things that you should do. So if you answer these questions, you know, you're going to get a good representation of what your ideal customer should look like. So what I'm looking for is just a 1-pager. You don't have to focus too much on the, you know, on the background description of your ideal customer, but you really need to, you know, highlight the attributes of what that customer is all about for Tim Hortons. And again, Tim Hortons may have 5 ideal customers. Pick one, right? And one of the good ways too is, you know, if you just happen to be going through a Tim Hortons, you know, tomorrow morning or whatever, when you go into class or whatever, take a look at who's around, you know, who's in the business, and that'll likely give you an idea of what's going on. And another thing is just take a look at some of the ads that are out there for Tim Hortons, and you know, just a few things in terms of, well, you know, they're patriotic, they're real Canadian, even though they're a U.S. owned company. And guess what? They had Sidney Crosby and other hockey players on there. So what does that tell you about where they're focusing? Where their ideal customers, sports-minded people. So that might give you some clues around developing this ideal customer. Okay, so I'm going to get back to the slide presentation. Okay, so just let me stop there right now. And does anybody have a question of what I've been talking about so far? You can unmute and ask, or maybe I can put the chat on. If you want to put a chat down, a chat question, I can address that as well. Okay, we're okay. We'll get going then. You want me to keep on going? Okay, I'll keep going. All right, so just want to show you how we've evolved, all right? So the traditional marketing mix, it's been around, for a long time, was the 4 Ps, right? And that was, product, price, place, and promotion. And post-pandemic, where digitization, I was looking at, I was doing some research in that the online activity, in the first year in a lot of the business went up by 40%. And in that 40%, I think it was 75% of the people said, we're not turning back. We're committed now. And that's, in terms of, buying online and doing these. And I know from our personal experience, my wife and I, we buy a lot more online stuff since 2020. There's no doubt about it. And we're into that routine now. And a lot of times, we'll check both sides of it to make sure that we're getting a good deal and everything. But I know that my behavior has changed. And I think that's what you need to recognize. And then also recognize that artificial intelligence in online buying is pervasive, and it's just getting stronger and more robust and complex to be able to provide great information, for marketers. So let me just go around this loop here in terms of the 8 Ps of marketing. So product, that's changed. All right. In terms of design, packaging, quality features, you really need to take a look at product in terms of the supply chain now. And when you design a product, you should have all members of that supply chain there to be able to comment on how it's packaged, how it's promoted, because that will make each link in the supply chain much more effective and efficient. Because in today's world, it's Alibaba competing against Amazon, which is competing against, other like Shopify. So that you need to be united in what you're doing. So the product end of it has changed. And also, I'll take you back to triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, and profit meaning prosperity. You really need to take a look at, you don't just look at a product to end of life or an offering of end of life. Where are you going to take that from a triple bottom line point of view? And the best example are circuit boards, all right? Circuit boards have a lot of expensive rare earth metals on them. And so that to recover those is well worthwhile. But what are we doing today in North America? All our circuit boards are shipped to Asia, where we have low-skilled workers ruining their health, trying to pull out rare earths. So, we should be designing those products much more effectively. So I'll leave it at that piece, to take a look at triple bottom line and how that affects everything. And guess what? Recovery of various parts and repurposing and reusing, the profit is there. Okay. On the price, you're going to talk a lot about price in this piece, but understanding that there's so many different price strategies to be able to accommodate different types of customers. And then the place has just reinvented itself. So place, and notice that, I've got some highlighting here in yellow. It's the multi-channel world. And, I'll show you this next slide. We're really interested. It's called access, and it's being where the customer is on that customer journey map, so that, in some cases they might want to buy something through e-commerce. In other cases, they may want to go to the store, or both. All right. And then there's different ways of connecting with them through the website, through community forums, and you got to be where they are. And that's how you really get to retaining customers and having them as your missionaries, your advocates, your champions, to be able to promote your business and then keep them coming back. Okay. And why? Because it's all about customer lifetime value now. It's not just the $20 they spent last week. It's, over their customer lifetime, they may be spending $4,000 or $20,000 in your business. And that's the way you got to look at it. And again, now, so that's why we're going back to the AP. On the promotion side, you see, this goes back to now the scope of your promotion is really widened. On the people side, well, that's all part of competitive advantage that we're going to talk about. The three main pillars of competitive advantage is people, process, and technology, and how they're intertwined is a way that you can maintain a competitive advantage, because it's not, other competitors can't imitate the way that you can bring this together. And that's where culture comes in, and that's where process helps you, and all those things. And then principle. What's principle? It says here, it means your business must stand for something. That's branding. We know that, especially in international business, branding is just an amazing lever to use. People trust you and are going to buy your stuff online, and they don't even know who you are, but they know your products, and they know that you stand behind your products and services. And then the process, we've talked about process quite a bit, the way that you can bring that together, and that's akin to what goes on with total management, total quality management, and managing quality through your process to be able to get to be efficient and effective and profitable, right? And then performance, we talk about that all the time, and what gets measured gets done. So again, I think the biggest lesson on this 8 P's of marketing is to understand how place has now, the scope has just increased, you're in terms of access. So you're developing integrated cross-channel presence, multi-channel cross-channel presence that considers customers' entire purchase, the journey, instead of emphasizing individual purchase locations and channels. So how does this all come together? So that's a key thing to understand in this topic. Okay, so now we're going to talk about competitive advantage. And where we are in that is that it's all about competitive advantage, and you can translate competitive advantage into profitability. But I don't want you to, just keep thinking about profitability itself. I want you to still keep thinking about triple bottom line, because, it has to be done, with the corporate social responsibility around it. And it has to be done, protecting the planet and making sure that our, that we're good ancestors, and that our offspring and, generations to come will be enjoying the same advantages that we are today. And that's all part of your responsibility. You're the new level of management going forward, and it's going to be, on your shoulders to kind of make this right, where we do things in a really good way. All right, so it's you base innovation on your own experience. You focus on offerings that have been overlooked. You validate market before jumping in. You pursue innovation the customers will perceive as value added. You focus on new ideas. You make sure you have sufficient capital. And all my work in the credit union, I've been on boards for many years, and talking to the credit people inside of the credit union, they're saying most small businesses do not exercise their capabilities in securing capital. It's all done through friends and family and their own investment. And if you don't have a track record, then you're seen as a risk by financial institutions. So get that under your, into your quiver kind of thing, into your portfolio of understanding and knowing how to secure capital. And I think we talked about, a lot of sources in previous topics, but don't let that slip by you, if you're going to start your own business. Okay, 3 key terms to remember, and I brought them up last topic, in terms of sustainable competitive advantage. And sustainable competitive advantage is a fleeting concept. You've got to keep at it to maintain that sustainability. It just doesn't stay there once you've arrived, so to speak. And to really tell you about that, it's this timeline, and this coincides with other timelines like the product life cycle or the offering life cycle. So the three key terms to keep in mind is develop, deploy, and decline. And you're developing, as you're developing, your sales increase, and we're going to show you your profitability when you're doing it in the product life cycle. But you're developing, and then you're deploying this at its peak where your sales are at the maximum. But what will happen, right? In some cases, you will saturate in the market, meaning everybody's got a smartphone now. So what do you do next? Well, you either say, okay, my smartphone, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep selling it, back to the Boston Consulting Group, and it'll be a cash cow. And when it's done, well, then I'll decide whether I want to liquidate it or just divest of it, right? And that's on the decline. Or you say, oh, hang on, there's some really upcoming features now that I can include in my smartphone, and then you can extend that deployment, keeping on. But those are the three words: develop, deploy, decline. Keep working on that piece. But how do you build sustainable competitive advantage? Well, it's got to be unique. It's got to be applicable to multiple situations. It's got to be sustainable, and we're going to talk about that. It's got to be superior to the competition, and difficult to replicate. That's key, because we're going to get into this uniqueness and difficult to replicate when we start talking about 10B, your activity on the VRIO framework that you're going to be doing for Tim Hortons, right? So that's a key piece. There's all these aspects. Know your competition, know your target market, define your ideal customer, because your ideal customer is going to be your bigger returns going forward if you align to that ideal customer. And that doesn't mean that there's other customers you're not going to serve, but it does mean that you're being strategic about it. And oh, by the way, you may have several ideal customers, several target markets that you're going after, and you can do that still in a productive way. So that's what to think about. Anticipating that future, and I kept talking about converging trends in the strategic planning topic. Understand how that comes together. Keep your customers happy. Why? Because customer satisfaction, everybody's doing it. They'll switch anytime something's better. But customer loyalty, you can take to the bank. That's all part of the service profit chain that I've been talking to you about. Get involved in your community, because if you're seen as part of your community and your purpose aligns with the community, then you're a trusted authority on what you're doing. And being a trusted authority is a real key part of staying competitive and being seen as being competitive, in terms of sustaining that competitive advantage, and then offer a better price. Everybody's always looking for a better price. So here's where we're starting to get into the information that you're going to need to be able to do participation activity 10B. And again, there's a few things here that are highlighted, and I want you to understand that is that there's two things that's really important, is understand what your intangible assets are that provides you that sustainable competitive advantage. Because if it's not tangible, it means that it's really hard for your competitors to imitate or emulate, right? And so those are things like brands or trademarks or some intellectual property that you have that's protected, maybe through a patent or a trademark or whatever. So that's key. And then understand what's unique about that company. What is it? And that should be right into your value proposition And I think I've formulated that when you do create your value proposition, you know, you're already starting to intonate what kind of strategy you're going to propagate in your organization. You know, whether you're going to have, you know, if you're going to focus on customer intimacy or operational excellence or product innovation, you know, any one of those three, and then the other two are you know, what you need to stay competitive. So remember all those things. But here you can see some yellow arrows here. Understand what your VRIO resources are, because this is a resource-based view in this RBV, and then what creates competitive advantage for you. So that's, and you're going to do it on behalf of Tim Hortons. So what gives Tim Hortons, you know, that edge, you know, that competitive edge, and how can they keep that edge? Okay, so it's a good idea then to go back into topic number 10 and watch that video before you do this activity. And oh, by the way, you know, there's probably going to be some good test questions around VRIO, so that would be a really good review for you. But let's just talk about competitive advantage. And the thing is that competitive advantage is a combination of people, process, and technology. And how you create that combination in your organization makes it really hard for your competitors to figure out, you know, what's giving you that leg up or what's giving you that advantage. Anybody could buy technology, you know, so you might have some super duper machines in your production area. They can buy those super duper machines. You may have a certain process, you know, to work those machines. But if you're really crafty on that, they might not be able to emulate the full process, but you know, they can get by, and then then maybe they could even hire some of your people. But it's your culture and the core competencies or organizational skills that you get through developing, you know, service profit chain wise or whatever, developing your people to have these key competencies that can innovate, you know, along with the key processes you have tied into the technology that you have. And now all of a sudden you've got yourself a really good combination that's hard to imitate, okay? And will give you sustainable competitive advantage for the time being, because you know, people catch up. And what I found in my experience, there may be some big players out there that have a lot more resources and are creating almost substitutes for what you're providing. And all they need to do is flick a few switches to up the focus on what they have to do. And next thing you know, they're eating into your market share. So it's evasive. You got to really stick to it. And I just wanted to remind you about, you know, this book again. And all you need to do is just go to Dr. Google and pick up the summary and find out what it's all about. But Blue Ocean Strategy is really guiding you into go into, you know, an uncontested market with this competitive advantage, and it gives you first in capability, which means that you can lock up those customers before anybody tries to follow you after they find out that you're really being touted on the Harvard Business Magazine. So those are the kind of things that you got to keep involved. So let's just talk about VRIO. And again, here's something that's highlighted. It's a question of imitability. So can people imitate you? So a company that has valuable and rare resource can achieve at least a temporary competitive advantage. However, the resource must also be costly to imitate or to substitute for a rival if a company wants to achieve sustained competitive advantage. I mean, that tells you the whole thing, all right? And again, the question of organization, you know, that's the people side of this triad that I talked to you about, is making that work, you know, with competencies and the way you're organized, and then the processes. So we go down this little procedure here. You know, is the resource or capability, is it valuable? No. Well, that's a competitive disadvantage if it's not valuable. Okay. Is it rare? No. Well, then people can they can pick that up themselves, right? But is it costly to imitate? No. Well, then you've got maybe a temporary competitive advantage until, you know, they can imitate it. And then is it organized to capture value? No. well, then you're not, again, it's a temporary competitive advantage. But if it's yes all the way down, well, then you have a greater opportunity or a greater capability to sustain that competitive advantage. But again, a little touch of reality here, it's a fleeting moment, and you really got to stay on your game, and you got to be on your A game all the time if you want to enjoy sustainable or sustained competitive advantage. Okay, so understand this, identify valuable, rare, and costly to imitate resources. And so when you take a look at, electric vehicles and you take a look at, battery production, it was no surprise that a lot of the big players went in and tried to tie up all the lithium reserves that they possibly could, because, then it's hard to be able to access, those resources. They become rare, and an advantage to the battery production people. So that's the kind of thing that you got to look at. And being unique, and unique means that there's no substitutes. If you want to be definitive about it, there's no substitute for what you do, or maybe it's a remote substitute that could may be able to catch up. So you'll have sustainable competitive advantage for a while. But what's unique? So here's some categories around. Well, it might be leadership. It might be the brand portfolio that you have. It may be the partnerships that you have that can make this happen, maybe internationally or whatever, that nobody could replicate. It may be, your TQM processes are so good that your teamwork is just, beyond reproach. Strong financial position where, in some cases of the business, you need that capital to get to that next level. And if you're not strong financially, then you can't stay in the game. Global presence, well-managed processes, innovative ideas. So you understand what makes you unique and what core competencies do you need to sustain itself to be able to be sustainable from a competitive advantage point of view. Okay, so when we go down this piece, which is important to you, I wanted to make sure you were clear of the definition. So when they say, that resource-based view must be heterogeneous, they're really saying that must be unique. And then immobile, meaning protected. So, they can't move to your competitors in any way. And then that will give you competitive advantage. And here's a few ways to remain, unique, because they're valuable, rare, and costly to imitate, and non-substitutable. But ways to protect is, to first in on the market, set up exclusivity, so that, you may find that somebody's providing you a rare, a resource, raw material. That's what I was trying to think of. Somebody's providing a raw material, in your area of operation, and you say, well, listen, company A, if you want to sell that much, we'll guarantee that we're going to buy a lot of that raw material, but you put in the contract that you are that we're only your only customer. All right, so you have this exclusivity to that raw material, or a supplier agrees to only supply your business for some reason, or be the only approved vendor of maybe this key software in this territory, those kind of things. Okay, so you're going to start going through this approach where you're going to identify what's valuable, what's rare, what's not imitatable, and how the structure is organized. All this on behalf of Tim Hortons. And so they really kind of Google Tim Hortons and find out, what they're advertising about, what they claim as their value proposition, and analyze their value proposition to see, what's so unique about it, and then what makes up that value proposition in terms of, the inputs that they have. And that will give you a really good idea of how to fill out this framework. But at the end of the day, it's all about sustained competitive advantage. And you notice that it's highlighted in yellow, so that you know that, and you're going to go through this framework and then understand how you can gain long-term competitive advantage. If you've got a yes in every one of those categories, it gives you a better idea that, hey, you're gonna do that. Okay, so we're gonna switch gears now. We're kind of going back to marketing. Just gonna take a little drink here. Again, think back on, you're doing this VRIO, what is Tim Hortons put into product design? And the first and foremost, look at this yellow arrow, the very first step is you define that product vision or that offering vision, because maybe it's a service. And then you're going to do some research about that, and you're going to understand the user, and that's your ideal customer again. And then you're going to go through this ideation process. And again, on the product design, I think it's evolved now where you really need to look at every player across that supply chain that's going to help you get to market, so that they all have a key on how to make this so unique and so robust and so functional, and create the maximize the value for the customer, because now you've got you've got diversity in your thinking, and you look at it more of a systems thinking approach to creating that offering, and then you can design it appropriately, and then you have to test it, and you got to validate what's going on, and then do post-launch activities, and that's the key to product design. But I want to keep you back, thinking about when you do that product design, you think about the triple bottom line again, and in all aspects of that. What about maybe they're extracting materials, raw materials for that product that you're going to build or whatever. Well, there should be some corporate responsibility around that, or maybe you're getting some things processed in terms of material, or maybe manufactured or assembled or the use. So you really have to think about protecting that global and human health and environment piece, promoting profit or economic prosperity, and look at the social welfare. So you truly design a sustainable product, and be mindful of end of use, on how that can be reused or repurposed or redesigned or whatever, to be able to give it a lot more value to society. Okay, going from there. Okay, so marketing research has a big piece in that, and I want you to understand the difference between primary research and secondary research, and that's coming up. There'll be a slide talking about that. But secondary research is what's available. You can go on the internet and find stuff through Google. You could go through industrial associations and find out a lot about the product and the providers of the offerings that are going on in that industry. You could go to governments and get information. In most cases, you don't have to pay for most of that. And then there's primary research. Well, that's when now you have information that you need that isn't available in other sources, and it's unique to this new design or new product that you want to design, and you'll have to do some key primary research. So that might be doing it yourself, or hiring a consultant or whatever to find key information, based on where your market's going to be, or what kind of product would fulfill that market, and all those things, and then get into focus groups and other things like that. So we'll get into those details. But essentially what market research does is you're providing insight into what the customer needs and wants, right? And then you're going to satisfy those pains and gains around that value proposition that you're going to help build once the research comes together, and then determine the appropriate marketing mix, right? So that gives you an idea of the scope of the various types of P's that you're going to use and how you're going to use them, and then understand that external environment and how that could impact your product, because of disruptive technologies. Some products can go out of date in a week, because something else comes in. So, when GPS was put into the smartphone, just think what it did to, you know, the big providers of GPS equipment, because some of their activity was being substituted into a smartphone. You know, that was a disruptive technology. So you need to understand that through what's coming down the pipe and how are these converging trends coming together that will create a disconnect in the market or create an opportunity that you can predict the future a little quicker and take advantage of, or mitigate your losses on some destructive technology that's coming through. Okay, so when you look at research, you know, we got a lot of highlighted information here. Research objectives. So if you're looking for background information, you know, in terms to clarify, you know, your sense of where that product is, your hypothesis of what you want to do, well, that's exploratory. And you're going to find a lot of that in secondary data analysis, right? You know, I talked about primary and I talked about secondary. And you'll do that in focus groups, or you'll do that in observational research. Then you get into describe and measure the marketing phenomena. Well, that's descriptive, and you're going to look at surveys, and in some cases that may be primary research because no one has that. But there are what they call omnibus surveys, where there's companies that do surveys where you can pay to have maybe 1 or 2 questions put into that survey, and that survey could be international, and it really cuts the cost down. So that's called an omnibus survey that you can get into, and then determine, you know, the causal pieces around, you know, well, if this happens, you know, what would happen here or whatever. So you're getting into a little bit of scenario planning in terms of what if you did this with this product and how would that affect the marketplace and whatever. And that's where you get into experiments and test markets. And it's no secret, there are certain cities in Canada that are test cities, say for Procter & Gamble. So if Procter & Gamble wants to test, you know, a new toothpaste or whatever, it's likely that they'll introduce that toothpaste in a city called Peterborough in Ontario, because it's got that certain makeup, you know, in the segmentation that aligns with where Procter & Gamble is in that particular, you know, product line, and they can really get a sense of how's the country going to react to that, right? So those are the kind of things that you look for. But again, you know, that here's the key things around primary research, you know, surveys, interviews, focus groups, observations, and then secondary research, online research, literature research, case study research. And this is all under exploratory research. So it, you know, it some of it could be primary, some of it could be secondary. Okay, and then in the design thinking, you know, you want to find out, hey, how can I help the world? You know, let me, you know, define what I'm looking for. Okay, let's come up with some great ideas on how we're going to do that. Let's create a prototype. Let's test it. And again, keeping in mind, you know, that triple bottom line is there to guide you, because now you want to design. You want to design a product for, let's call it an infinite life cycle, so that even if it gets end of life in use, you know, its components and elements will be used in other areas, all in the spirit of, you know, sustainability and keeping the environment great and helping society go through. And thinking about that again, I can't remember if I mentioned this here now or whatever. You take a look at circuit boards. You know, that's a tremendous challenge. All our circuit boards get shipped to, you know, to Asia, you know, in countries where they have low-skilled labor, taking apart those rare earth metals and whatever, which are really expensive and of value, but they're doing it under just adverse conditions where their health is being compromised to do that stuff. There's got to be better designs to be able to take a look at beyond, you know, its useful life in that particular life cycle, and then have these you know, ways of disconnecting things that are in the design of the product itself. Okay, so, you know, we talked about, you know, those 3 key words, you know, of competitive advantage, And let's just go back and just take a look at those again. Okay, so here we are, develop, deploy, decline. Okay, and you saw how that kind of rose and fell. Now let's just take, let's just take a look at this product life cycle. Well, here we go, develop, deploy, and then decline, right? So that it's all connected. So understand that is that, how are you going to manage a competitive advantage, on the decline side of the business? So, here's a chance where you kind of start thinking about, can I refresh this, modify, for alternative uses, adapt to a new target market, and then how do I maintain, sustainable competitive advantage in doing that? But your product life cycle, it's about, promotion, pricing, distribution should adjust based on where you are in this life cycle. Because look at where your products, that when you're starting this piece, well, you spent a lot of money on promotion. So look at where your profits are going because you're introducing this product, and then when you're deploying, well, now you're getting that offering into the market, your profits are going up, and then maybe you saturate the market or you have a disruptive technology that comes in, and then your sales start declining, and look at where your profits are going, right? So again, competitive advantage, has a big component of profitability associated with it, and so that competitive advantage should go hand in hand with, how do you modify the product life cycle of your offering. And then understanding as well, about customer lifetime value. I mean, that is just so key. And the banks really have this nailed down, right? Because they know where you are in life, and they know how to, increase their value from you. The value of their revenue from you. So you take a look at, right now in college, you're probably all getting you're recruited to have, to get a credit card, so you're at the transactional level. Then, you graduate, and lo and behold, you probably need to buy a vehicle or something. So that ups the value of that transaction with you and the bank. And then they know that at some point in time, you're going to look for some lodging. Okay, so that's more value. And then all of a sudden now you're starting to build wealth. Well, there's some more, they're going to look at, wealth management and get more value from there. And then you get to be old like me. And then they take a look at, well, how are you going to transfer that wealth to, your offspring? And then there's a whole new part of pulling that out. And so you look at not only how is your customer moving through their life cycle, but how can you capture customer lifetime value? And the whole idea is that you may have someone come into a store and spend $20, but that store should not be thinking about, oh, I made $20, that's great in revenue. How do I keep that customer coming back? Because over a 15 to 20 year period, that customer may be bringing in $20,000 to $30,000. So that's the kind of thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the marketing mix and you're looking at, the ideal customer that you want to bring in. And so, you look at every stage of the client development from suspects, so where you're offering them a free newsletter. So those are sort of unqualified prospects that, they look like, they have the right demographics, psychographics, all the piece that are likely to be good. And then all of a sudden, a little more about them, and they're in a different part of their life, their lifetime journey. And then you say, yeah, okay, they're prospects. So you qualify them. And then when you qualify them, then you start, trying to close on selling something, and then they become clients, but you don't stop there, right? You want to get them to be loyal, and they turn into be premium clients, and then get to that advocacy part of being your missionary or your advocate, and they're your champions, and they're bringing in they're bringing in business to you. And then on the business side, they may be maybe your B2B or your business to business, they may be a partner in an alliance to be able to do more in the business. So that's how that all comes about. I just wanted to mention this Robert G. Cooper. I had the privilege or the very much of a fortunate aspect that he was a visiting lecturer at where I was doing my master's, and I actually used this process that he has in his book, and I actually launched, because I was still working, I actually launched the product at Alberta Power, and I actually sold the first subscription to that product, which was a career highlight of mine. So there's really some good information that he can share with you, and he's a big promoter of being there with the customer when you're actually doing the prototype, to really get the observation of what they're doing, and their facial expression, right down to their facial expressions about how they're responding to that particular product in its use, and you can uncover all kinds of details about how you could improve what's going on, and getting the commentary firsthand, in the moment, is rich information to be able to improve on your prototype and everything else. So a lot to be learned from that piece. But again, what is a product mix? Well, a product mix is a collection of a firm's product lines. And I want to make a point here is that it's different when you just have one product and you stretch your capabilities to be able to drop the unit cost of that product, right? And that's where you can get into economies of scale, right? Because as you improve your technology and you go to a higher capacity, you can get that unit cost down through economies of scale. But a product mix is just a scope, right? It's not economies of scale. It's scope, and you're bringing a group of products together that are beneficial, to key customers. And for all you cost accountants out there, just remember this. In a product line, you may have a particular product that is not making money. And the cost accountant will say, well, let's just drop that out of our product line. And what will happen is that you may lose customers because they will just drop your whole product line and go to another supplier that has the entire product line for cost of administration and convenience and delivery capability and everything else. So just be very mindful, about that as well. Okay. So, and then we're going to talk a little bit about pricing strategy, and then, competitive advantage is all about profitability. So you should know something about, pricing in terms of, what's markup pricing? Well, that's just marking up a percentage, of the cost. And it's easy to do that, especially when you're first in, because, you can do that on purpose and have a premium price because you're the only product in town and there's absolutely no substitutes. And then as the competition starts coming in, you could drop that markup and then still keep your status in the market. So those are things to think about. This is just to show you how markup pricing fits in a whole a line of different types of pricing strategies, so that there's plenty out there. A little more on markup pricing going forward, but again, competitive advantage, price strategy, it's all about maintaining profitability. And then just a little bit about, loss leaders. Loss leader pricing is that that's, they may not be making any money on that, all right? So you'll take a look at Walmart, and Walmart may advertise, toothpaste at this phenomenal discount, and everybody will rush in to buy that toothpaste. That's a loss leader. So they may be losing, or they may not be, or they may be making zero profit on it, but they get you into the store and you buy that discount toothpaste, and now you've spent $300 because you were there, right? And that's what a loss leader is all about. And go through these other things in terms of, penetration pricing. That's discount to get in and start eating up market share or follow the leader or variable. So those are the kind of things. But loss leader is something to think about, a little more information on what that's all about. But you got to be careful, right? You got to really look at your cost accounting and see how, you know, how detrimental in one ways that if you have too many loss leader offerings, you know, that may be just eating into your profits. So it may be not a good news story for you. So understand that, you know, where that could go. Another thing I wanted to bring your attention to, you know, there's, you know, on this promotional mix, you know, there's still so many areas where you need to be where the customer is. And, you know, that's, you know, the customer journey that I talked about in that slide that I showed you. But you know, have you been on Highway 2 from between Calgary and Edmonton, you know, of late, and especially at night, where you see these billboards that, you know, are lit, and they're LED lit billboards now, very powerful. All right, and so they're still here to stay. All right, and they're especially on the highway, and they're just eye-catching designs and digital options to really attract. And so you've got time to look at that, and they're playing with, you know, your memory and your subconscious, and that will get you to be a purchaser someday. So think about this actual customer journey piece, and really, you know, it's where to be with the customer when they're going through this purchase process, right from starting to be aware of your offering to getting some interest, where they're starting to consider, and then and they may just, hey, drop you an email to ask you for more information, but then maybe just try out, you know, to buy off your website and then come into your store. And like I said, the millennials, you know, they do both because they want the experience. You know, that's what the research has shown me over the years that I've been reading. And then you do your purchase, and then all of a sudden now it's all about how do I keep them coming back, you know. And your website in today's world is, you don't, you know, any kind of website that's worth its weight, it has a bot on it, and as soon as you happen on that website, you know, it wants to, you know, be sticky. It wants to keep you there, and you have a chat box asking you, well, what are you looking for, and can I help you get there, and whatever. So and then there's a community forum, you know, to be able to know, you know, this is where your customers can talk to each other's, to similar customers or whatever, and tell them about your products and services, and then that's all form of a retention, and then getting into where they're actual champions of yours, and you keep them tied in with the newsletter and look at that. Here's another key area, you know, understand this marketing hourglass, because it really takes you through, you know, you're really following this as well, okay? And you can see awareness. Look at awareness right down here. Advocacy, advocacy. Hey, so you know, it really gives you a sense of what's going on. So this is just this customer journey, you know, turned 90 degrees. So know what this is all about, and about the marketing hourglass. And this is, you know, something to keep in mind, because you could spend a lot of money trying to develop new products. You could spend money trying to find other customers. But the greatest opportunity for growth is selling more products to existing customers. So keep that in mind. And again, if you've got them, you know, as loyal customers, and they keep coming back. And I know in my experience, even, you know, especially in some contractors, I've learned how they've grown, and it's only because they were doing something really well and they kept their customers happy, and a customer would come back and say, well, I got this other problem. Have you ever thought of doing this? And those providers have adapted and said, hey, yeah, we'll try that out. And I know I did a business evaluation on a welding and manufacturing shop in Ontario a couple of years ago, and they were making carts for a customer, and you know, with wheels and things like that. And another customer came in and said, oh wow, you know, have you ever considered making horse trailers? And lo and behold, they made a horse trailer for this customer, And today they're manufacturing horse trailers, right? So, you know, and that was an existing customer, right? So, you know, it's the greatest opportunity growth is selling more products to existing customers. Okay, quick one about CRM. Understand it's a company-wide business strategy designed to optimize profitability, revenue, customer satisfaction, focusing on specific customer groups, and lo and behold, you know, it's chock full of artificial intelligence capability, and that's where that's going, and it's just going further and further. And think of it, you know, CRM will tell you more about certain customers that they may not even know about themselves, because what it does is, you know, it integrates factors from the information that they found and then correlates those factors and provides new analysis information to be able to give you a sense of, you know, what do they really want and how can I really make them happy and how can I keep them coming back, and that's how it works. And it's through technology, you know, it's strategy, process, people. So those are key things, you know, that are part of CRM. But here's the main, you know, the main words around CRM: acquire, convert, retain. Right? It gives you an idea of how to acquire leads, how to convert these leads into sales, and then how to keep those customers. You know, apart from all the other pieces. So, you know, here's another thing of the process about how this all comes together. But it's acquire, convert, and retain, you know, going forward. And there's different types of CRMs, you know, operational CRMs, analytical CRMs, collaborative CRMs, customized CRMs to, you know, accountants, customized CRMs for, you know, optometrists, you know, all in the way to be able to capture information and keep it and be able to analyze and find out more to be able to be more relevant to your customers. And again, like I said, this role of artificial intelligence CRM, it's just pervasive, and understand, you know, what it can do, you know, for that, you know, in terms of how it can pick up the data, retrieve it, you know, bring it together in terms of correlation of factors, do analysis around the emotional parts, and then you know, looking at the data integrity, you know, predictive lead scoring, and all those things to be able to help the sales process. You know, it's got all kinds of things. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I think we've kind of just made 2 minutes over the timeline. But again, I hope that I've given you enough information to be able to do your group participation activities for topic 10. And again, look at that Word document that's in the weekly commentary posted under topic 10 to be able to help you do that ideal customer piece. And lo and behold, you know, enjoy your week. Okay? Any questions? Okay, if there's no questions, you know, send me emails. And again, use my RDP email. Don't, you know, try not to send me information or emails through Blackboard. I'm still adjusting. I'm checking them out more, but it was outside of my routine. So that if you want to get my attention, you know, call my telephone number. It's on the course outline, and then leave a message, and that goes right to my RDP email, and I can actually find out what you need and get back to you as well. Okay, so I'm hoping all this comes together for you. So we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. My pleasure.